Hello and welcome to another episode on my channel, The Fifth Volt. In this episode, I want to show you a patch from scratch using the Synthexplorer. I have to say this is my favorite configuration in the AE Modular system. It is small, it is portable, it's made for education, so it has all the important modules that you would need, and no more and no less. And I think if I wanted to make a modular, my instrument with which I practice making music, then this would be the configuration that I would choose. The patch that you just heard a little bit is a Berlin School patch. It has a bit of a sequence, it has a little bit of delay, there's some modulation of the filters in there, and has a beautiful leading voice, which is modulated again using a filter. So it should be in the tradition of a Klaus Schulze or Tangerine Dream. I will switch over to the camera and we will rip out all the cables, and then we will recreate the patch from scratch so that you understand how everything works together to create this kind of music. If you enjoy this, then please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any questions or any other comments about this video, please leave it in the comment section below. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you will enjoy this patch from scratch in the Berlin School tradition. Well, let's start with the sequence first. And it always starts with an oscillator, and I always want to hear that everything is patched in together properly, so that this cable is going to my recorder, this cable is going to my MIDI keyboard, and of course we have power. So let's patch up the oscillator. Let's start with a sawtooth wave. This goes into a filter. So I'm using the SV filter here in this case for the sequence. And from the filter, it goes into a VCA. And from the VCA, it goes into our mixer. So then from the mixer, we have to take it to the multi-FX. So I'm taking the output of A, which is the first one, into the input of the FX module. And then I'm patching the left and right channel of the multi-FX into the output module here. So now, theoretically, we should already hear something if I just turn that knob, because the oscillator always produces sound, and that should always produce something. So let's see if that all works. Okay, so nothing's happening, and this is because the VCA doesn't have a gate or an envelope, so it's not opening. So just to test this quickly, is we can patch in a output of the ADCV here, where I'm using a 5-volt signal to just open the VCA. And now, as I'm opening the VCA, we can hear the beautiful sound of this oscillator. Okay, so that works. Now for the sequence, we want to change the notes that the oscillator plays, and we want to drive this from our sequencer here. So I'm patching the sequencer CV first into my quantizer. And then from the quantizer, I'm patching it into the oscillator at the top here. Now, why I'm using the quantizer? Well, I'm not a very good musician. I don't hear things very well. So the quantizer just makes sure that any control voltage that I'm programming into the sequencer is transformed into a minor scale, as it is. so that, I can always be sure that any interval here fits into a minor scale. Then, of course, we would need to tune the oscillator using the knob up here. I've done that already, so it's a bit painful, so I'm not going to do that again. So this is now at a kind of a voice where I feel quite good about it. So now that it's on the sequencer, now the sequencer is also driving the gate for an envelope to open and close the VCA. So we have to patch an envelope into the VCA. So I'm using envelope 1 for this, and I'm patching that into the CV input here on my VCA, and I'm getting the signal to start the envelope from my sequencer here. Using gate and gate here. Now nothing's happening, and that is because the sequencer isn't running. And that is because we need a continuous clock signal. Now in this system, I'm using an LFO for the clock. So I'm taking the second LFO. You can see that it's flashing quite fast here. So I'm taking the pulse output and putting that into the clock here. And so here's a little bit of a trick. I'm using the ramp or the inverted ramp of the LFO here, and I'm adjusting the pulse width to give me a good clean signal in this output here. There are combinations of these where you don't get a good signal for the sequencer, so this works quite well. Anyway, the sequencer is running and I'm getting different steps. Now let's hear if we can hear the sequence. Perfect. So now I can adjust how this sounds like by adjusting either the filter, making it brighter, or duller. And I can also change the sound by changing the envelopes here. Changing the decay makes it snappier. And if you open the decay, then it gets more full-bodied. So let's go for a good medium here. You can hear that there's a little bit of a click. And this is because the envelope is very short. So you can adjust the attack to make the click a bit softer. Okay, so we have a sequence, and here you can see that, I've kind of adjusted the different sounds that they are fairly close to each other, so it's not too widely apart, and the sequence kind of goes through this. So you can change the way the sequence works. Fantastic. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of variation to the way this sounds. And one way you can do this is by changing the filter cutoff frequency slightly. And I want to do this randomly. So the way I do this is I'm taking a random signal and I'm producing this using the noise module. So I'm getting a random signal from the noise and I'm putting this into a sample and hold. The sample and hold will sample an output of the noise signal every time it receives a trigger and will send this out through the out until it receives the next trigger to send another signal. So to do that, we need a trigger here, and I'm taking the trigger from the sequencer. So every time there is a gate, I'm getting a trigger here, and then I'm sending this into my filter. And then I can adjust. So now you can hear some change. You can change how much the influence is. So we get a little bit of randomness into the whole affair, which is quite nice. So now let's stay on the sequence for a bit longer, and let's turn this at the second half to it, which goes through a delay. So to do that, I'm taking the output of my VCA. This is still the output number 1, but the second bit of here, and I will put this into the delay input. And then I'm taking the delay output into the second channel of my mixer. And then I make sure that the delay is on all wet. And when I add this delay, I'm getting a nice offset rhythm here, which is almost like a second voice. So now let's add the drums to it, because that's also very simple to do. So the drums, we will take the output of the drum kit into our mixer. So here's our drum kit. We take that into the mixer channel number 4. And then, let's put this into channel number 3. And now I just have to drive the drums in some way. So what I'm going to do is I take the multi-mode divider and I will use the different channels on here to give me different drum rhythms. So number 1 is usually the fastest output, so I will usually put that into my closed hi-hats. And then I will take the second beat and put that into my bass drum. So now we won't hear anything, and it's not working because it also needs a trigger. So we take the output of our LFO and we will drive the clock here. So let's listen to that. So here we can hear the hi-hats, and then we add the bass drum. Now this is a very limited system, so normally I would love to have the drums outside of the reverb, so it's not so washed out. But here I really don't have the luxury of having different channels with different levels of reverb. So unfortunately the drums have to go through the reverb and be in this kind of washed out thing. But you know, this is the beauty of being restricted. You have to make compromises and just work with what you have. So the beauty of the multi-mode divider is that I can change the rhythm by just turning this little knob here. Okay, I have my own drummer. So now the last voice is the lead that I would play with my keyboard, and here I'm having the MIDI input from my keyboard going into the system, and this means that I can take the notes or the note information directly from the MIDI bus, but I also want to put this through the quantizer, so I'm using the bus CV here, putting that into my second channel on the quantizer, and then I'm taking the output of the second channel into the CV input of the second oscillator, and then I'm taking the output of the second oscillator and putting this into the WASP filter. And then from the WASP filter I'm going through a VCA, and from the VCA I'm taking that into my mixer on channel number 4. Now you've guessed it, there's one more thing missing. We have to open and close the VCA according to a gate signal. So here I will put in an envelope, and I have one more envelope to go. I have the second envelope still, so I will use that. And then I will trigger this from the gate signal. And the envelopes have the bus gate here, so I can take it from there. And I will trigger the envelope using the bus gate. So now, if we look at this light here, when I press a key on my keyboard, that should light up. And it does. So let's listen to that. Beautiful, it works quite well. And you can see here that I've tuned the oscillator to be in the same tune as the first oscillator, and I did this by ear, so it could be a bit off if you have perfect pitch, but to my ears it sounds quite okay. Now in the performance I didn't tweak this knob for the cutoff frequency, and that is because I didn't want to have my hand in front of the beautiful synth while I was playing. So what I did was I used a remote control for the CV cutoff by patching in the CV1 into the second output of my 2 at CV module here, which is on 5 volts. And what I did was I will turn this WASP filter down a bit so that you can't hear it by itself. And then I turn that up a bit. So now when I turn the Add CV knob here, I will add more CV to the CV input of the cutoff frequency. So now I can tweak the cutoff frequency of this filter, and without having to put my hand up here, I can use this one here. And this is the beauty of modular synthesis, that you can just combine the modules as you see fit. And that was a patch from scratch using the Synthexplorer from AE Modular from Tangible Waves. And I was going for a kind of a Berlin School theme here. And I hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, have a great day. And thanks again for watching.